This encounter happened to me a while ago. I couldn't share it for a long time. For some background, I live in the country in Ohio. Down a long drive, fields on two sides, woods in the back. I'm about a mile from town, so if I need police, I have to call the sheriff. I live with my husband and a boxer. The night this happened, my husband was getting some overtime at his factory. It was Saturday, and he was working third shift. I had spent the evening at my parents' house and didn't head home until around midnight. I stopped in at a 24-hour gas station to get some drinks and chocolate and beef jerky for my dog Alizé. As I exit the gas station, I get this feeling that's so strong, I just look around because I knew someone was outside with me. Over to my left about 20 feet is this girl in a really cute little dress with a white horse mask on, just standing there. We stared at each other for a minute before I hopped into my car and quickly pulled out onto the road, almost hitting a light pole as I belatedly checked my back seat for danger. That was unnerving, but I was home just a few minutes later, giving Azazel jerky and eating chocolate and watching TV. All of a sudden, my dog takes off down the hall towards the back porch, barking and growling and attacking the window. I run in there afraid of a window is going to get broke again. Alizé broke a window trying to get a coyote once already, and I stopped dead in my tracks. There, standing at the window, is a horse mask. Again, we stared at each other. I looked over to the back door. Was it locked? Shit, I couldn't remember. Horse mask looks over at the door. Slowly, I walk over to it. So does horse mask. We both reach for the knob. It was locked. Horse mask looks behind her, and for the first time I look around in my backyard. There's a guy in a horse mask too. I'm like, okay, this is enough. I'm calling the cops. I got Alizé and shut the door to the porch and went to the living room to get my cell phone. Of course, I left my phone in my car when I carried my stuff in the house. In my car that's in my garage. My dark garage. Basically lacking any choice, I opened the door to the garage and tried to open my car door, but oh, guess what? I must have locked it and I didn't have the keys. I crept back into the house, no sign of Alizé. No horse masks in the backyard that I could see from the kitchen window. I grabbed my keys and got the phone. I called the sheriff and told them what had happened, and I was followed home and ended alone. They asked me if they were still outside. I looked out the windows room by room, nothing. Right out front they were, just standing about 100 feet away, holding hands, staring. I honestly was crying at this point to the dispatcher, who assured me someone would be there soon. As I stood there, clearly on the phone, the girl waved. Then they walked hand in hand down my lane, out of sight. It took the sheriff 10 minutes to get there. They found nothing. Told me the guy probably sat in the car and they followed me. Just kids being kids, they said. My dog didn't come out of the bedroom the rest of the night. I sat up listening in silence until my husband got home. A couple weeks later, someone from the sheriff stopped by to follow up. They said they checked the camera at the gas station, but all it shows is the girl walk up to the dumpsters and stand there until I left and she walks away. When this encounter happened, I was only 10 years old and my sister was 12. Our father passed away when we were very young, and to this day our mother never remarried. During our childhood, our mother would go out on dates with men she met, but they would never amount to anything more. One Friday night she went out and left us home. The door stayed locked, but this time I guess it just slipped her mind on the way out the door. Anyways, the living room connected to the hall that the bedrooms were on. My room was the second bedroom down the hall, with my sister's being the third. In the middle of the night, I woke up to the sound of the door opening. I figured it was my mom coming home from her date, so I rolled back over and tried to go back to sleep. A few minutes later, I heard the door shut again, and a few seconds after that, my sister comes into my room terrified. She told me she woke up and saw a man standing in a doorway staring at her. He was wearing a long black trench coat. He never said anything, and when he realized she was staring back at him, he turned and walked out. I grabbed my baseball bat from my closet and creeped into the living room. The door was wide open. By this time, my sister had called my mom and she had called the police. When the police arrived, they searched for fingerprints but found nothing. The scariest thing was that nothing was taken from the house. He came in but didn't take anything. We stayed with our grandmother that night and the following night. The next day, the police returned to look for more evidence. My mother did notice that one of our chairs were missing from the back patio. It was found in the woods behind our house on top of the little hill. How long had he been doing that? Apparently, there had been 2 other similar break-ins in the neighborhood. He would come in but not take anything, and all of the people were single mothers. What would have happened if my mom had been home that night? A few weeks later, this hermit guy that lived down the road was found dead from an overdose. I don't know why, but Mom seemed to think he was one that was watching us. There hasn't been any break-ins in the neighborhood since then, though. On a Saturday night of this past July, I arrived home sometime around 1 a.m. from a night of watching UFC on pay-per-view at a sports bar with friends. I was in a genial mood since it was an astonishing night of fights, and because one of my favorite UFC fighters, Conor McGregor, had won his fight. As I made my way up to the steps that led to the side door of my house, I kept replaying his victory in my mind. Being the safe, sheltered person that I am, when I arrive home late at night, I always have my keys ready to be put in the door as I approach it. But because I was so focused on thinking about the fight, I was not aware and mindful of my surroundings as I usually am. As I got to the top of the steps, I heard what sounded like rustling come from the backyard, which is about 30 feet from my side door. I leaned over the banister and began scanning my backyard, hoping the noise I heard was just raccoons that lived in one of the humongous trees in the yard. My heart started to beat faster and I began to experience that sinking feeling in my chest. As I am surveying my backyard, I noticed an unusual mass next to one of my trees. As I looked closer, I made out what looked like a person's head, which I was only able to see because it was slightly illuminated by my neighbor's outdoor light peering out from the side of the tree. I looked even closer, and as I did, the person moved his or her head back behind the tree. My eyes widened, and I could feel the adrenaline start pumping through my veins. At that point, I was terrified. But I decided that I was not going to run inside my house. Instead, I crouched down and carefully made my way down the steps and head towards the backyard. Making sure not to make any noise, and with my heart pounding, I crept up on the tree that the person was behind. When I was about 10 feet away from it, I saw the person, who I now could see was a skinny white guy, poke his head and shoulders out from behind this tree. I shrieked, froze in fear, and with a shaky voice muttered, "What the hell are you doing here?" We stared at each other for a brief moment, then he quickly turned and began to run towards my back fence, jumped over it, and faded into the darkness. Freaked out and shaking, I ran back to the side door, unlocked it, hurried inside, and dialed 911. I told the operator what had occurred and what the man looked like and what direction he had headed in. My parents, now awake and horrified at what happened. The police arrived at my house within 5 minutes and took my report. Unfortunately, they never managed to find the guy. What bothers me is that I'll never know why he was in my backyard or what he was intending to do. Since that summer night, when coming home late, I always hastily make my way to my door. I still look at that tree thinking that I'm going to see his head peer out. I'll never forget his face and the way he stared at me. Thumbs up if you liked the video. Leave comments if you had any crazy stories. Maybe I'll add them in the next video. And subscribe.